Imran, thank you for joining me briefly on The Inspiring Entrepreneur. Thank you so much for your time. So you and I had a great coffee chat the other day, and I decided to hook up with you simply because you are on a brand new path.
Right, that's
You've
right.
started your own business called Transform Your Life.
That's right.
So you went from being in the retail wholesale space,
Right.
in the commercial space, to now call yourself a life coach.
That's right.
What created this shift in terms of the business path that you want to follow?
Okay, so mine's actually quite an interesting story. I finished school and then decided to study. So I entered university and I decided to do auditing and accounting, which I subsequently did, and completed my articles of clerkship with a company called Deloitte & Touche, which is one of the world's biggest auditing companies. No sooner I completed that, I entered into the business arena and entered into the retail sector of selling ethnic hair care products. So the journey was quite interesting. I got into the industry right at the right swing of the industry, meaning that I got the right wave, and what I then managed to achieve was to achieve some significant growth. So the business, despite it being new, took off from the get-go, and I very, very quickly managed to scale the business. I went from retail into wholesale and then went into a cash and carry. But one of the challenges that I sort of undervalued, or one of the challenges that I didn't foresee, was that in order to scale a business, you need to actually have the right kind of mindset, and you need to have the right tools, and you need to have the right architecture. So my biggest mistake, if you wish, was scaling a business very, very rapidly without the proper infrastructure, which then led to my actually collapsing the entire business because I couldn't sustain it. My cash flow, I had massive cash flow pressures, I had infrastructure pressures, I had staffing challenges, I had financial challenges, and the biggest of which was my competitive challenges. So I entered into a boxing arena where I was underweight. I was out of my weight class, and that basically led to a massive financial crisis, which led to a massive financial loss. And that journey, took as you can imagine, pull the earth under my feet, and it took me a very long time to actually overcome that. And so I was then faced with the prospect of bankruptcy, and my moral fiber did not allow me to do that. So I then decided that, you know what, I am going to do the right thing, and I'm going to take responsibility for this multi-million rand debt. And I'm going to find a way, albeit I didn't have a plan, to actually find a way to actually navigate through that process and settle my debts. So I did that largely over a 10 to 12 year period. And then but in so doing, and having dealt with all of the challenges with lawyers, with summonses, with potential judgments, with threats, all of that took a huge toll on my health. Because it was obviously I immediately went into what is now called a survival mode. So when you go into survival mode, your survival instincts kicking, but what actually happens, you find yourself being flushed in your body with survival hormones, which is basically adrenaline rushes all the time. So I got so accustomed to living in survival mode, albeit it was 10 to 12 years, but imagine living with that level of pressure for such a long period. So that took a massive toll on my health, which sweetly led me into a triple bypass. So out of a financial crisis, I then landed myself into a health crisis, which obviously exacerbated the situation. But by the time that had happened, I had managed to resolve a lot of my financial challenges. But having said that, I was then, went into a triple bypass, trying to sort of piece my life together, and then I was unemployed for like almost 17 months because I couldn't work. And in that period, the last challenge that came and just knocked the wind out of my sails completely was my stepson was arrested and falsely accused and imprisoned for murder for a period of 14 months. So now I had three cataclysmic events, one which led into the other, which basically became quite unbearable, if you wish. Imagine trying to deal with all three things: finance, health, and family issues. So that is I managed to again, but through the resilience and through the indomitable spirit and fighting spirit and the self-belief that and my faith. Ultimately, it was my faith. If you ask me what held you together, it was my faith. Because they say a faith that hasn't been tested cannot be trusted. So my faith was tested, and I'd like to think that I lived up to discovering my spiritual purpose in life, and that became my clothing, that became my garment, that actually held me and stitched me together. And through that I started then to deal with real serious inner issues, discovering who I was. And so I started this whole process of self-awareness, figuring out who I was. I spent many years in this whole process reading books, attending seminars, watching movies, listening to YouTube videos, doing anything and everything to get a better understanding of who I am.
And why is it important for anyone to take this journey
This-
of self-discovery? I mean, what did you discover on this journey
Right.
that you didn't know about yourself before?
Right. So this is interesting because we often go through life almost at 200 km per hour in no particular direction, right? So when you go through self-discovery, what do you actually get to understand the essence of who you are. And how do you get to do this? You get to understanding your value system. Once you establish elicit what your values are, who am I? What is it that actually makes me tick? What is important to me? What's not important to me? What do I value? Who do I value?
So when you were in business before, you're saying there was a disconnect between what your values were, or
I didn't even know I had values. The only value was to make money, to be honest with you. I think that was so I mistook, or I placed the whole aspect of success, the whole definition of success became wealth. Like that was the only definition. And now I realize that actually success is defined not only by wealth, success is defined by wealth, by freedom, and by meaning. And so meaning and freedom were missing from my life. What freedom am I talking about? So when I speak about wealth, you're talking about the wealth of finance, the wealth of health, the wealth of relationships, the wealth of spirit. That's wealth. What is freedom? The freedom to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, how often you want, in whatever shape or form you want. Right? And what is meaning? Well, the meaning actually brings about, challenges you to ask the existential questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I heading? How am I going to get there? So when you marry these three components of wealth, freedom, and meaning, you start to then eventually create what you call your own identity.
So your financial crisis, besides making some decisions that didn't work in your favor in terms of the industry you were in, and in terms of what you said you wanted to scale, and that didn't quite work out, you found yourself in debt, and everything fell apart.
Right.
So you are saying that when you want to get into business, it's also important to know who you are.
Absolutely. It's critical because
what you stand for, what your values are.
You see your values, right? The voids in your life. The voids in your life, like in my case, the voids in your life determine your values. Mm-hmm. So if you are very clear about what your values are, and then if you live in congruence with those values, then two things happen, right? One is you become very creative because now you don't need motivation. You see, when you're living in congruence with your value, you become inspired. So when you're inspired, you do things that actually make you happy. You need motivation to do things that you dislike doing. And so this is the fundamental difference. Once you know your values and you live in congruence with those values, right, you start becoming inspired. When you start becoming inspired, you start becoming creative. When you start becoming creative, the universe starts conspiring to bring all of those things to fruition. So this, having gone through this entire process, I then obviously literally transformed my own self.
So you're actually speaking my language, because I've also been on this amazing journey, and it was important for me to actually find out who I was personally and what is important to me, and how can I serve as a journalist as well, and 100%. How can use my talents to serve others. So the bottom line, what you're saying is, in order to be an inspiring entrepreneur, you need to be congruent with your inner values and who you are authentically.
Absolutely.
And how can you help people do that?
So I can help people by actually using my own experience, right? My experience was, I actually, by virtue of going through this process, I actually found a methodology, if you wish. I found a system that I used, which I now use very well, to hold me accountable. Right. So what it does is, now I actually have developed a system. The system is actually, I've designed a signature system which I call the Life Blueprint. Right. It's the Life Blueprint basically, in essence, covers three critical areas of your life. Right. One is self-awareness. The second level is self-mastery, and the third level is self-expression. right? If you know who you are, if you improve who you are in the areas that you're not good, and you marry the two, then finally you can express yourself and be the best version of yourself. When you do that, right, you then become an asset to society. So now, having gone through this entire process, I have transformed my life. But not only have I transformed my life, I've now made it my life's purpose to help other people to transform their lives. So I've got a complete shift in my career.
So would you say that crisis that you experienced was your platform?
Oh, it was an absolute, it was a boon, it was a blessing.
To create this business.
Absolutely, had I not gone through that. So if you ask me...
That was your springboard for change within yourself, but also to help others.
Absolutely. So that, I'd like to end it with this, right? So they say if you relate every ugly thing to its beauty, then the meaning of its beauty will come to you, and then you will see the imperfection, right? You will see the beauty in that imperfection. And you will come to a wonderful realization. There is no imperfection and there is no ugly. Everything comes to serve you. I've realized now all of these experiences in my life had led me to this very point, because now I'm ready to launch myself to help other people. So for me it was a blessing. I mean, I have absolutely zero regrets about what happened in my life, because it's made me who I am, it's made me authentic, it's made me real, and now it's going to give me a sense of purpose, and I know that I'm going to add value to other people's lives, which will actually help me to leave a legacy beyond my life. So all of these experiences were wonderful, but as an entrepreneur, if you have to be true to yourself. So part of my in my process, I have what I call the 6-step thrive process, because we need to thrive. Check, we are all responsible for our own thriving, and we are responsible for our own flourishing. Nobody's going to do it for you. So my thrive, I use the acronym thrive, right? Be true to yourself. Know your honesty, right? Take responsibility for your life, right? Use your intuition, right? Know your values and master your emotions. That is the thrive. And how do you do that? By using flourish. You have to, how do you flourish, right? Faith is another acronym. Use faith, right? Love, right? Being other people centered. Looking, what can I do for others, right? Understanding. U is for understanding. R is for response. How do you respond to your life? S is to surrender to life. And H is to attain final happiness. So this to me is the entire discovery of my life. It's the journey of my life, and it's something that I actually want to offer to the world now. So,
thank you, and wishing you all the best in your endeavors. Thank you for sharing, Imran.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
It's a very powerful, very important message.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.